Welcome to People and Profit. Today, a major economic issue in France's presidential election, the reform of the pension system, coming up. How does the French retirement system work now, and what do the candidates want to change? We'll look at the financial state of the current arrangements and discuss the impact of raising the retirement age. Plus, we'll hear from French pensioners about how they're making ends meet after leaving the workforce. Now, it's been a politically sensitive issue for years in France, how to overhaul the country's complex pension system. A major reform proposed by the current government stalled in 2020 due to the pandemic and after mass protests. But it's once again become an issue in the presidential campaign. In a moment, we'll talk about what the candidates are proposing. But first, let's hear from some French pensioners about how they manage their budgets.
It's time for a bit of afternoon bingo for this club of retirees. Some, like Thérèse, are happy with their pension. She gets around €2,000 per month.
I feel sorry for those who have to keep track of the smallest expense. It's not right.
Etienne and his wife, in contrast, have just €1,300 to live off per month.
We don't have much. No big meals. My son lives with us and helps out with the rent.
Alain was a market vendor and now struggles to make ends meet.
My pension is small. Shopkeepers, craftsmen and farmers, they all have next to nothing. And yet I paid a lot into my pension.
The 17 million retirees in France are paid on average €1,380 per month. This former secretary's pension is slightly below that average at €1,350. She says it's not enough. You're both wearing lots of layers.
Yes, it's cold. Sometimes I turn off the heating during the day. The cost of living is just too high. We have to tighten our belts.
She tracks every penny, and after she's covered all of her fixed costs, she's left with just €490.
It's hard at my age to still be pinching pennies. I would love to not have to keep track so much.
Both of them think the state pension age should be set at 60. How can we deal with the deficit?
There's money in this country, and it's not being spent on the poorest.
With the presidential campaign in its final stretch, pensions reform could swing undecided voters.
Kate Moody joins me now. Kate, first of all, can you remind us, how does the French pension system work currently?
Well, Stephen, at the moment there are 42 different pension schemes in France for different sectors or types of work. Rail workers, for example, are guaranteed different benefits than office staff. All workers pay into the public system with social security contributions. They're also enrolled in a supplementary plan depending on the sector they work in. Those funds are managed by a not-for-profit federation of unions and employers. The minimum age for retirement in France is 62, but to claim a full public pension, retirees need to have paid into the system for at least 42 years or else wait until they're 67. Pensioners are eligible for at least 85% of the monthly minimum wage. That's currently just over €1,000. Or they can receive up to half their average salary from the 25 years in which they made the most money. There are a lot of exceptions, but that is the basic structure.
So what then are the candidates proposing to change about it?
Well, let's start with Emmanuel Macron. He wants to progressively push the minimum retirement age to 65 instead of 62, as well as create a universal points-based system and fix a monthly minimum of €1,100. Conservative Valérie Pécresse and far-right Éric Zemmour also want to raise the retirement age to 65 and 64, respectively. She's proposed linking the minimum pension payout to the national minimum wage, while he's focused on increasing the amount that a surviving spouse can claim from a deceased's pension to 75%. The other far-right candidate, Marine Le Pen, says people who entered the workforce before the age of 20 could retire as early as 60, later for those who were older when they started working. She's suggested linking pensions to the rate of inflation. On the other end of the political spectrum, the far-left Jean-Luc Mélenchon also wants to lower the retirement age to 60. He says no elderly person should live below the poverty line and that full pensions should be fixed at a minimum €1,400. The Green Party's Yannick Jadot and Socialist Anne Hidalgo would both keep the retirement age at its current 62. Their platforms each outline special benefits for those with harsh working conditions. There are a total of 12 candidates in the running, and each has pledged to make some changes to France's pension system.
OK, Kate Moody, thank you very much. Well, the public retirement funds here in France have been in deficit for years. The situation was made much worse during the pandemic when the gap slumped to over €6 billion. As the economy bounced back, the deficit has shrunk dramatically too. But in 2021, the two basic funds for private sector workers still spent €2.6 billion more than they took in. Let's talk more now about this with Michael Zemmour, who's Assistant Professor of Economics at Panthéon-Sorbonne University here in Paris. You've also co-written a book on the French social protection system, and I should point out that you're not related to any candidates running in this election. Can I ask you, first of all, what sort of financial state is the French pension system currently in?
The French pension system is currently rather balanced. There is a small deficit, but it is rather small as compared to the amount of total pension paid. I have to precise that in France, we have a pay-as-you-go system, meaning that current contributions are paying current pension. It's not based on any funding system, as it can be the case in other countries.
Do you think then that the system is serving its purpose? If it only has a relatively small deficit, although we are talking about billions of euros, does it need change, or is it providing people with the right sort of protection?
I would say currently the pension level is quite good, meaning that pensioners have a comparable standard of living as other people in the population. Their income is lower, but given that they don't have children they have to care for, their standard of living is comparable. The real issue is what will it become in the future, because the number of pensioners will dramatically increase in the future. And then we have to make some decision whether, as it's known setup, pension will decrease importantly, or whether we will put more money in the system.
Of course, there's quite a lot of discussion about this in the election campaign at the moment as well. One of the things that is being discussed is changing the age at which people retire. What's the best strategy to take in that case?
I would say it's a political decision. It's true that in France, our minimum retirement age is 62, except for special case, which is rather low as compared to other countries. But on the other hand, health at work is rather worse in France than in other countries. And then we have different candidates pushing for higher age of retirement or lower. And this becomes a terribly political decision. On the one hand, Emmanuel Macron wants to reduce pension expenditure, and then he pushed for an age at 65. And on the other hand, several candidates on the left push for allowing retirement age around 60.
So is that affordable if you wanted to reduce the pension age? Is it inevitable, because people are living longer, that we have to raise that age?
Yeah, it is affordable. If you want to lower the age, you have to increase contribution or system revenue. And on the other hand, if you follow Emmanuel Macron's proposal, you will reduce actually the expenditure of the system. So it's not actually a reform to balance the system. It's rather a reform to reduce public expenditure or to push people to work more or longer. But it's not really about the balancing of the system.
One of the issues that raising that retirement age would mean people working longer. Older people in France tend to be unemployed at higher rates than the rest of the population. What can be done to address that?
I think probably this question should be addressed before any new pension reform. It's difficult to say, but probably to work on health at work and on training for workers at any age could improve the employment rate of seniors. You have to keep in mind that in France, when people retire, 1 out of 2 is out of work for more than a year. So only 50% of people switch from employment to retirement. And one good objective would be to allow people to stay at work until the present retirement age of 62.
What role does inflation have in this debate? We've heard earlier in this programme from pensioners who say they're finding it hard to make ends meet as prices are going up. Should that influence what happens to the pension system?
In France, I would say pensioners tend to be protected from standard inflation, given their pension increase according to the price index. But it could be true that over time, the situation become more and more difficult.
Does making changes to the pension system need to be a priority for the next president?
I wouldn't say this is an emergency because, the system is reasonably balanced. But it is a good debate to have to give people a vision of what our pension system will be in the 30 next year. For now, if no reform is done, we know that people in 30 years will feel much poorer as a pensioner now. So this is a debate we should have and we don't have.
Okay, Michael Zemmour from the University Panthéon-Sorbonne, thank you very much for speaking to us. And that's all from us for now, but you'll find this and all of our previous programmes on our website and as a podcast wherever you usually listen. And do get in touch on social media with your comments and questions on the economic issues in the French election. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Bienvenidos a las noticias de France 24.
Thanks very much for joining us. أهلا بكم في ثقافة في عدد اليوم. Ravi de vous retrouver pour Afrique Hebdo. Au programme cette semaine. نسمع بين حين والآخر. This storm has hit New York City a lot.
To be a president. 3, 2, 1.
Madagascar fait face à une seconde vague meurtrière.
Almost 99 million of you watch us every week. So thank you.
شكرا.
Gracias. Your confidence means a lot to us.
Muchas gracias.
شكرا على هذه الثقة.
Thank you.
Merci du fond de mon cœur.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.